Hi, this is Lisa, and you are listening to I Love That Movie. This podcast is for movie lovers. It's not an unbiased opinion, it's not a straightforward review, it's just a couple people talking about a movie that they love. The format is each week I have a guest, and that guest and I discuss a movie that they love, something they're obsessed with, something they connect with. We'll talk about the plot, the director, and the actors, but we'll also talk about the personal connection my guest has with that movie. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, keep listening. Hey, this is Lisa, and if you want to catch up with me on Twitter, you can find me at ILTM Podcast. I'm also on Instagram. I Love That Movie Podcast, and we have a Patreon. The show is always free, but if you want to support us on there, you can. That's at patreon.com/I Love That Movie. And right now we are covering The Falcon and the Winter Soldier every episode. I cover them with a guest each week. We've also covered WandaVision, The Mandalorian, so there's a lot of extra content on our Patreon, including a weekly roundup of what I've been watching that week. And I want to take a moment to thank our top patrons, and they are Chris Valga, Michael Cross, Philip Barker, and Jeff Woodman. Thank y'all so much for keeping the lights on. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe and rate the show. It does help new listeners find us. And yeah, I'm done with all my plugs. So I have a returning guest, somebody I just mentioned. So say hi to a familiar voice on here. Jeff, say hi, Jeff.
Who, me?
You, yes,
You
you.
just said my name twice.
I did.
Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
Yes,
it's been
welcome back.
Since pre-pandemic.
It has. Like, we've talked since then, but it's been since
Yeah, a lot.
pre-pandemic since you've we chat a lot on the Twitter. But yeah.
On that their Twitter website, yeah.
Yeah, although, lately it's been, well, this whole year it's been exhausting, but
yeah,
that's just because it has been an exhausting past year.
Right. Yeah.
We both know how
Accurate.
that feels. But Jeff, in case people haven't heard you on the show before, and they should definitely go listen to your episodes, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I'm primarily a singer-songwriter. I think before, when I was on here, I mentioned that I did a podcast or whatever, and I don't really do my own podcast anymore so much, not so much about movies. Maybe returning, though.
Yes, I've heard through the grapevine.
Oh, you have? You heard?
Yes, from Charles.
Yes, yeah, mutual friend of ours and guest on the show too.
Yes.
Before
fan or not a fan. That sounds weird. He's not a fan, but a friend of the show is what I meant to say. Don't tell him I said that.
He's a big fan. He's a big fan. He's your biggest fan. He tells me all the time.
He's the biggest fan of loving films. That's what he's known for.
So we have a combative type of relationship. It's playfully combative. So he always calls me like, the Siskel to his Ebert or vice versa, however you want to look at it. And so he's just been actually asking me for kind of a long time, but throwing it out there, like maybe we should do a podcast. And I didn't know if he was serious or not, so I just kind of didn't respond for a while. And then I was like, let's just do one then. And he was like, oh, well then, yeah, he was just 100% on board. So I don't know. We could have something soon. It's not going to release like weekly like yours or anything, but
well, awesome.
Yeah, so that's coming out soonish, and we're just going to ridicule each other, and it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, it's going to be probably vicious, so tune in.
That's going to be the entertainment aspect of it, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be entertaining for sure. I think both of you have, I told him both of you have great like podcast energy and voices, so I feel like that'll be really good.
Oh, I don't know about me. I can't stand my voice. But
well, I feel the same way about mine. So,
but you actually, whatever. I mean, I get it because we're very biased. Our own worst critic.
Yeah,
but you actually have a good radio voice. It's not.
No, oh my gosh! If you knew like the hazing that I've gotten in my life, you would. But you know how like one little comment will stick with you forever. It's probably the same thing for you. Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that we did. We did 3 movies before Shawshank once.
That's right.
What We Do in the Shadows. We were.
We did What We Do in the Shadows.
That's Halloween month.
I wanna
Um,
say that's the first time I saw it too, if I remember correctly.
I think you were watching the show at that point, right?
Oh, maybe you're right, maybe you're right, yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure you had some familiarity with it when I mentioned it.
Okay, okay, I couldn't remember because sometimes, well, once I definitely had only seen when you
Yeah,
told me
once
about it,
was
yeah.
definitely a movie where you hadn't seen it yet, and I was
Yeah.
like very nervous about. I don't know. You could go either way on this ending.
I hated it. We're
Hated
gonna
it.
talk about how much
Saw
I
it
hated
once and never again.
it.
Good title.
Yes. But, we're talking about a different movie today,
Yeah,
and wanna
very.
remind my guests, the guests actually picked the movie. People always message me and they say, "Is it okay if I pick this movie?" Or, "The next time you talk about this movie," and I'm like, "Funny thing, I don't pick them. You pick them. So, when you
Exactly.
wanna talk about it, I'll talk about it." But, what movie did you choose to talk about today?
Ladybird.
I am so
Yeah,
glad you picked this one. This
I
came out
can't
in
believe it wasn't
2017.
taken.
I know. I feel like do you feel like when it came out, a lot of people acted like, "Oh, this is like overhyped Oscar nonsense." And it's like,
Possibly, but not nearly as much as I'm sure there were other movies that year that, like
true,
Shape of
true.
Water, got more backlash
Oh,
than Lady
absolutely.
Bird did, even before it won
Mhm.
Best Picture.
But I put this movie off. I didn't see it right away. I
I get
think
that.
I think somebody convinced me to watch it, and then I did, and I was like, "Wow." Like, well, sometimes a new director will get buzz,
Hmm.
um and you're like, "Oh, but, this is, like, their
Yeah,
first film, it's gonna be a kind of a experiment, you'll see the potential." Nah, this is a real solid movie, like, it surprises me. I know she's done other things, but this is, like, her first solo for Greta Gerwig, and it is a really good film. It's
yeah,
like, of this genre, it's probably one of my favorites.
yeah. Like the coming of age
Mhm.
type. I feel like the best coming of age movies have come out recently. Like, I mean, I
I
know that's
know.
probably recency bias, but with this and Booksmart, Edge of 17, um, I'm sure there's others.
Oh, yeah, but I agree
There's
with
others I
you.
latch onto that are older, but I feel like I don't know. I don't. They're just getting better because they're being told differently.
Agreed, like, they're definitely fresh,
Yeah.
and in a perspective well, I mean, part of it might be because, like, in later Lady Bird, it takes place in the early 2000s, and that's, like,
Hmm.
when I graduated high school, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
resonate more with that than, with some other movies,
Yeah.
that could be part of it too, but, yeah, I really liked this, didn't see it in theaters, but really enjoyed it when it came out.
Oh man, I did. And talk
Of
about a
course
movie
you did.
I've nearly done a 180 on.
Oh,
Because
really?
yeah, I remember leaving the theater like and giving it. I think I was on Letterboxd at the time, and I gave it like 3.5 stars or something because there were some like immediate gut reaction was like there were some good moments in there, but I didn't understand the ending like at all. Um,
Mm.
just like I didn't even bother to try to understand the ending. I was just kind of like, how are you going to end your movie like that? And I was just like up in arms about it. And I don't know. This is probably the maybe one of the only movies where I could listen to Greta Gerwig talk about this movie for, and I've listened to her talk about it for hours. And it's like the more I hear her talk about it, the more I like appreciate the movie, which isn't
That's
a normal.
interesting.
It's not a normal thing for me. I normally just kind of do my own. I don't know, come to my own conclusion, whatever, like we all do whenever you finish a movie. Um, but I was just compelled to listen to what she had to say, and she put so much thought into every detail of this movie, and you can tell it's clearly like something she's thought about for a long time, especially because she came from Sacramento.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting you say that about the director sort of enhancing it. I was watching director conversation on Netflix, and it was between Alfonso Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro, and they were talking about a movie that I saw, I think last year, called I'm No Longer Here. And, I saw it, and it really just struck a chord with me, it impacted me, I really loved it. Nobody's seen it that I know of. It was on Netflix for a while, but I watched their director, chat, which is weird that it's on now. I don't know if it came out earlier than now, but it was on now on Netflix, and I watched it, and I was like it was really validating because they were just talking about, like, the potential of the movie, how different it is, and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, sometimes getting to hear either the director or even like another director talk about a movie can really change how you view that
Hmm.
film. And
I,
so,
I
yeah.
think I don't know. I think 2017 when this came out was the year I really started doing or listening to director podcasts like Directors Guild
Oh, okay.
and stuff like that. So listening to Jordan Peele talk about Get Out around that year too
Mm.
was really enlightening to that movie. I already love that movie though, so it
Yeah, I
was
like
just
that too, but
it
yeah,
just made
I
me
imagine that's
appreciate it even deeper.
right.
Yeah, I could just listen to directors talk like all day. I
Yeah,
swear.
same. So before I keep going though, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. Not that this movie hinges on really
No, there's
dire
no big
spoilers.
reveal.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
no
yeah,
real big reveal here, but if you haven't watched it yet, I would pause, watch it, come back. If you're still here, here is the summary. A nurse works tirelessly to keep her family afloat after her husband loses his job. She also maintains a turbulent bond with a teenage daughter who is just like her, loving, strong willed, and deeply opinionated. And normally I don't pick summaries that short, but I mean, that's that's essentially what happens in the movie.
pretty
So,
much, yeah.
yeah. I had a couple of quick facts I wanted to share. And the first one was that this movie takes place from 2002 to 2003. Personal note, I think I graduated. This is sad. I'm getting this old. I think I graduated high school in 2002. I'm never
Not even
sure when I
sure.
say that. I would have to look at my yearbook. The time when Greta Gerwig graduated from St. Francis Catholic High School in her hometown of Sacramento, California. Gerwig wanted to avoid making a contemporary movie as she didn't feel confident telling a story revolving around teenagers who are obsessed with their smartphones, which is so weird to think about and so true.
Mhm.
Like, it's so cringy too, anyway, when directors are like, I'm going to make a teen movie. And you're just like, I mean, you're like our age and cringing, wondering what young people think of the movie. But
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a lot easier to just, tell your own story, pick your own time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I don't begrudge her that at all. That's actually a
Yeah.
really smart move, especially because there's no nostalgia pieces for this era, almost none.
Not yet. Although I wonder what younger people think watching it. Like, maybe they do watch it and think it's full of nostalgia. We just can't tell because we're like,
Right?
no, that just happened
Yeah,
20 something years ago.
right.
The movie is Greta Gerwig's first solo as a director. She did co-direct Nights and Weekends in 2008 with Joe Swanberg, which, by the way, huge gap, 2008 to
Wow.
2017.
I didn't even know that. Was that on IMDb or something?
Yeah, I pulled it off. It's like one of their facts on IMDb. I just combed through and I'm like, which ones do I think are interesting? And that
I
one
didn't
seemed
know. I didn't know
interesting.
that at all. I mean, I knew she co-wrote with Noam Baumbach, who's like her life partner and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
know
like
she.
she's worked on TV mostly, right? Or
No, I don't know about any of her TV credits, if I'm honest with you, but
okay.
I do know that about her collaborations with Noah Baumbach,
Okay.
who's done. For those that don't know, but probably do because they listen to this. But he's done, Mistress America with her. I think
Okay.
she 100. I think she 100% wrote Francis Ha, which
Yes, I believe
he
that's
directed,
true.
if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Um,
Because I used to
and
think that was one of her movies. Like, I thought she directed that until.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just very much got her energy
Yeah.
spread all throughout it. It's a funny movie. There's like a dinner scene in that movie that's like kills me. Where she just doesn't know how to conduct herself with like adults. It's just really funny. I think no, she wasn't in While We're Young, but
Yeah, I
that
mean,
is a Noah Baumbach movie, and it's really good.
people may have seen her acting before,
Yeah,
hearing things. Yeah.
Greenberg acting with Noah Baumbach directing and writing,
Mhm.
and that's a Ben Stiller movie. And basically, that's all I knew her from was that.
Yeah, I did not I hadn't even seen Frances Ha, so I did not I was not familiar with her, but this definitely made me an Insta fan. The last thing that I had was that the popularity of this movie spawned walking and running tours of Sacramento, California,
That
locations in the movie.
Mission I bet she has to feel good if she read that or whatever about that fact because I mean
It's
she
kinda
does have a
surprising.
pretty deep love and appreciation for Sacramento, even though
Yeah.
the main character is kind of conflicted about her relationship with Sacramento, or at least she comes off that way. But even by the end of it, she comes to realize that I actually love where I'm from.
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, and I agree with you. That's got to be really gratifying to Greta because
mhm.
when you write about your own experience and she's filling it with so much love, like as kind of like the nun says in the movie
Yeah,
to Christine, but it really comes across. And I didn't know that about. the tours in Sacramento, but I think maybe some of that is because, like, not that I've been to Sacramento specifically a lot, but I have a lot of family in California, and so I've
Hmm.
been to a lot of California cities. So to me,
Oh,
I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, this place, that place." And so I didn't think about the fact that, like, if you haven't been there, yeah, you'd be like, "Oh, I wanna go to the places in this movie."
right.
So that's really cool. Yeah.
I'd want to. I mean, just because everything's been shot in California.
Yeah, true.
I've only been there once, and it was my brother was like stationed over there when he worked in whatever you want to call it, enlisted was enlisted in the Air Force, and he it was more on like the San Jose side, or at least that's where we landed, and then it was like
Okay.
another hour or so until we got to where he was. That's the only place I've been, and I've so California's like been like
Oh, you
on my
should
list of
definitely
shame in
go.
terms of travel places. I haven't been to that place, like that state,
Well, a lot of
hardly
the
ever.
places that I went to growing up, like, we would make this every year, every couple of years, give or take, we would go to California, but most of my family lived, in Bakersfield or I think in Mission for a while, or maybe they live in Mission now, but I didn't do fun stuff. It was like we, take grandma up there and then we visit all these missions and things like that. Like it wasn't
Oh,
like I would always be like, this sucks. Like on TV, they go to like Hollywood and I'm always like
yeah,
at all these missions. Um, so I did get to see some stuff. Like I remember my dad driving me around Pasadena and going, hey, this is where they filmed um, like I think it was oh, not Pasadena, San Dimas. That's where they filmed,
yeah.
like, why can't I say the name of this movie? I Keanu Reeves, uh
Oh, Bill and Ted,
Bill and
or
Ted, Bill and Ted, that's
oh,
what I
okay.
don't know why I couldn't say that
I don't know why
immediately.
my brain wouldn't let me because I
My
when you
brain
hear
wanted to
that
say
you would
Wayne's
think
World instead, but I knew it wasn't Wayne's World. Okay, yeah.
right.
So to rephrase, my dad used to like he drove me around San Dimas and he was like, "This is where Wayne's World was, honey." Or not Wayne's World, Bill and Ted was, honey. And I was like, "Yay." And that's like one memory I have of being there.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so, anyway, I got off track, saw went on one of my tangents. But yeah, so but I do want to go see the places in this film and I think that that's great that
Yeah.
she was able to communicate that. But do you want to talk a little bit about the cast next?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best, especially in retrospect, even though we're only 4 years out, but this is like one of the best indie casts ever until I guess she does Little Women. Um,
Yeah, true.
because when you look at the supporting characters, the supporting actors, they've gone on to do. I mean, I specifically am thinking of Timothy Chalamet
Oh
and
yeah, he's like
um,
exploded
right, and
since
and
then.
Beanie Feldstein, who went on to do like Booksmart, and I think she's going to be Monica Lewinsky too.
Oh really? That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that.
But so I mean, in terms of those two people, the cast is amazing. But Laurie Metcalf is like some inspired casting.
It really is. She seems like an authentic mom in the
Mhm.
movie, and it's
I didn't
anyway,
even
go
know
ahead.
she had a first name the entire time. I've watched this movie like 6 times.
Oh,
Didn't
yeah.
know she had a first
She
name. I
just
just
calls
called
her
her mom.
mom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned on Wikipedia this week that her name is Marion. That's
Yeah,
how
you're
good
right.
she
I don't
is.
think they say her name a lot or if at all.
No, I don't think they
Just
do. I
mom.
think maybe the dad does. I don't even know the dad's name either. But they just seem like quintessential like parents.
They really
Like
do.
they're just bona fide parents, and you. I don't know. They just play them so brilliantly. And but that's some inspired. Tracy Letts, I understand being in an A24 movie. He's been in a few.
Yeah.
He's a he's I don't know. He appears in indie movies a lot. But Laurie Metcalf, though, that's some really inspired casting, and turned out to be the best choice because she
I
just
agree.
killed it. And all apologies to whoever won the Oscar, but you shouldn't have won. I don't even know who won. I can't remember who won. It's
Oh,
gonna drive me crazy
man.
now.
Yeah, I can't remember either. It's hard. They all start to kind of blend together. I'm like, "What
I
wait, is
remember
that?"
now. I remember now. It was Allison Janney and I Tanya.
Oh, well, Allison Janney was really good in that.
She was good in that, but like I feel weird about that movie. Like I
Oh, really?
enjoyed watching it, and I
Mm.
really shouldn't have. Like they were playing the abusive moments for laughs almost, and I felt really uncomfortable with that.
That's yeah, I did notice that, especially with Sebastian Stan's character.
I noticed it specifically with Allison Janney because like she
Uh,
had all like the quote unquote funny lines that were pretty much
just
abusive,
mean,
but
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. I remember people being mad about that movie and saying things like, "Oh, they're trying to make her out to be a good person," and I was like, "I didn't read it that way at
I didn't
all."
get that at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I read that she was a deeply flawed person
Yeah.
that had a lot of factors that led to what she did, but I don't think the movie excuses her. I mean, she even says at the end of the movie, like, "This is how I see it, not necessarily reality."
Right.
It was more
I
like a character study to me than it was like, "Oh, actually, Tonya Harding is a great person," you know?
right. No, I didn't take that away from it at all.
Yeah.
I did actually like the movie. It was just I don't know, Laurie Metcalf. Her performance basically just had her
It's
convince
pretty
me that she's my
nuanced.
mom in the movie, which is I feel like a little bit harder to do.
Well, yeah, and it could also, one thing that I noticed about this movie that's different from other coming of age stories is we're used to sort of like the closed off, somewhat emotionally distant father figure that
Right.
can tend to be a little bit mean, have a little bit of an edge to him, tough love kind of stuff. I don't know that I've ever seen the mother portrayed that way and in a positive way. Because
Right.
usually when women are portrayed, especially moms, this way, I feel like usually they're just the bad guy.
Yeah.
And she's so nuanced and layered, and I think that's a really challenging role. Like, how do you be funny but also sometimes she's biting,
Yeah.
and yet when Sarah C. Ronan as Ladybird in the movie says like she has a really big heart and she loves me,
That's
I
early on in
believe
the movie
that.
too. That's
Yeah,
like she knows this early on, even though they're already
arguing,
at
yeah.
button heads. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you get that across? Because she could have said that and we watch it and go, "No, your mom sucks," like,
Right.
it's just the writing is really good, and I agree the performance is really good.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Timothy Chalamet too is
Oh my god, he's
kind of a show
perfect.
stealer. Uh,
He's so good in that role. I was like, "This
he
is
is.
literally a guy from my high school that I would have been in love with," and later would have been like, "I'm so stupid." So perfect.
I can't say I knew a lot of people like him because I wouldn't have been friends with somebody like him.
But if you're a girl, you'd be like, "He's cute. It's okay that he treats me like garbage." Like, I'm serious.
Yeah,
Like, it's just he'd seem cool and confident, and I especially maybe just in the early 2000s, I would have been
the
so dumbstruck by that. I would have had a
right,
hard
right. The
time
movie
seeing
makes
him.
me appreciate the fact that it's written by a woman because I was a dude. I'm like watching it, going, "What's with this guy? Like, why do people like this guy?"
I think they give him a little bit. There's like things that happen in the movie that make you kind of understand him a little bit, though. I
Mhm.
think Greta Gerwig does a good job of like all the characters in the movie.
I
They've
agree
got
with that.
layers, and even he has layers, I think. I mean, he's being a dick, but I think
Yeah.
he's got more going on. But
He
he's
didn't
he's
he didn't
really
really start as a dick. I mean, sometimes he has good points, but it's kind of like, okay, well, you don't need to like brush everything else off just because there's a
yeah.
war in Iraq or whatever. Like,
No, I felt like it all had to do with his dad and his dad having cancer. Like, that's how I read it.
yeah.
Like,
Yes,
that's
and they
where.
did cut a scene that was more explicit about that because you really have to be paying
Oh.
attention to catch that detail. But like,
Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah.
he Timothy Chalamet's even like jokingly bitter about it during an interview, and he says that like there was a scene where they're at a funeral and he's hugging like his family and stuff. But it's
Mm.
not in the movie, so like nobody can sympathize with him really 100%.
I did hear in the interview he was like, "By the way, I'm nothing like that guy." Like, I am not like that.
They
But
do,
yeah.
yeah. He's even told stories about like just being at a coffee place and somebody's like eyeing him, and he's like, "Oh, this person must know me from Call Me by Your Name," and the person that's looking at him is like, "Are you the douchebag from Ladybird?"
Oh,
Like
no.
that's all he like
Well, now he can be
at that
Lori.
time. That's all he was known for. Now he's
Yeah, and soon
he,
Ma Dib, so
right.
but yeah, like, when he's Lori, he's so precious and wonderful, so he
Mhm.
has that now going for
Exactly.
him.
So yeah, oh my gosh, his delivery of the line, "That's hella tight." Like I just makes
I
me laugh so freaking hard every time.
It makes me mad that we said that back then. I'm like, "That sounds so dumb."
I honestly, I don't think we did. I think it's just him.
It's just him. He's the only one. I hope that's true. I mean, there's no evidence, but I hope not.
Right. Beanie Feldstein's really great. I'm kind of dancing around, I guess,
Oh,
Saoirse
no,
Ronan,
yeah,
even though
she's
she's
awesome.
amazing.
It's
But
so weird to go back and see this movie and be like, "Oh, yeah." her,
Yeah,
because I
exactly.
know her so well now.
She's got that. She's got a great scene with which we'll talk about the scene soon. But yeah, she's got a great like performance near the end of it, I guess.
Oh yeah, her little
They also cut
final
out a
moment.
scene where it was like everything was like had a nice bow, and Ladybird was like saying goodbye to everybody.
I like
That's
that better though because I think that's more
I agree.
realistic.
I agree. And Greta said something like, "Well, I mean, it felt like the stories had already concluded, and I didn't really need to include an explicit goodbye. Like people just kind of move on." So she just cut. Those are like the only three scenes that she cut. Is like the Kyle funeral, whatever scene for his dad, um, and then Ladybird saying goodbye to Julie. Who's Julie? And that's like an ongoing thing in the movie. Uh, and she said goodbye to somebody else too. I can't remember who it was, but they cut it out. And I'm kind of like grateful that when you hear some of these stories, you're like, oh yeah, yeah. Actually, you know
Yeah,
what? You're right. You're good for cutting those. Actually, it's already a
they
good
would have
movie
like
as it is. So
belabored the ending, I think, and taken away from some of the impact.
yeah, I
Because I
agree with
mean,
that.
and also the character at this point still, she's like kind of selfish, so
Hmm.
seeing her like tearful goodbyes to everybody wouldn't really make sense.
Yeah, and you wouldn't
She's
really
got to grow.
feel it as much.
Mhm.
You'd just kind of be like, all right, whatever, you're whatever. Like you're moving
Yeah.
on. I don't really care about your sadness right now. You've kind of been impossible the entire movie.
Right.
Which is another aspect I love about, I don't know, the entire movie really is like
Same.
that the lead character is not this person that, I mean, you do want to root for her. I don't know. There's something very realistic about her, the way she's written and performed.
Yeah, probably because she's kind of based a little bit, at least, on Greta Gerwig's experience. Not entirely.
Right.
She did say she was a goody goody, so
Yeah.
she wasn't really like this. But there's a raw honesty to the character and the fact that the actress sort of resembles Greta in some ways. Like you just feel like this is a real honest look at somebody like this
Hmm.
instead of a caricature of that person. She's definitely layered. Also, my favorite word this podcast, but
Yeah.
um, she's
It's a layered movie.
yeah.
There's a lot of layers going
There's
on
so
here.
many layers.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I
Layer bird.
agree.
Yeah.
Layer bird. She is. You don't hate her, or at least I didn't when I
I
watched
didn't.
it.
No, I didn't hate anybody. I have a really hard time empathizing with people that hate this movie because Ladybird's annoying or whatever. It blows my mind, and it's usually older people, like maybe a generation, um, what's ahead or behind us. I guess you would say
You know
behind us,
what?
right?
I'm actually thinking of a friend of mine that complained about this movie to me and said like something like, "I get it. She's a teenager and thinks she can do whatever she wants and doesn't care about her parents. I don't want to hear about this. She should have been grateful." And I was like surprised at that response. But
Yeah,
they were older than me, and I still feel like once we get to a certain point, we forget what it was like to be young.
yeah.
And this is like probably the most shameful part of being young is just how dumb you are about stuff like this.
Very, very self-centered at that age, honestly,
Yeah, it's
and
the worst age. I mean, people always say that, but like when you watch this, you or at least I think of things that I said and did, and I'm like, God, she could go back in time and slap me.
yes, yeah. I mean, I was a total I was almost an irredeemable dick when I was in high school. Um, I can't even come up with any excuses for it because I had a good time in high school. Like I was in theater. Um, so those are my friends. Were all the theater kids. So you can
Oh,
imagine
so
I
you
related
relate
to
to this
this
even
movie.
more, yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't try to abandon my theater friends for quote unquote cool kids. That never happened. But it is interesting to watch that unfold, and it unfolded exactly the way I thought it would. Like
Yeah,
you eventually,
yeah.
you're like, these cool kids aren't really that cool, are they?
They're kind of lame and adrift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They're trying to figure it all out too, but they're more.
They're just meaner.
Yeah, they're just meaner about it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So my recollection, and at least I've been told by my parents, and like my sister in law and stuff, because she lived with us for a brief time when I was in high school. I was just impossible when I would get home. I was just like nobody talked to me and stuff like that,
Oh
like,
my gosh, like dramatic.
yeah, I took the theater home with me, I guess. And
There you go. Being a
I wasn't
teenager is dramatic, though. It's a tough time.
I wasn't like, I don't know, cussing everybody out and like shouting and abusive and stuff. I mean, I was shouting and stuff, but it was like inanimate stuff. Like my computer
Hormones,
wouldn't work
I
and
don't
I'd
know.
shout.
Yeah.
But I just didn't. I just wasn't. I felt like I wasn't a good person, but I don't know. It was really just the fact that I was in high school.
Yeah. I will say for me, like, not so much how she acts at school and not who she is, but her relationship with her mother does remind me a lot of the one with my mom because it
Mhm.
was contentious, like a lot of daughters say. And it was probably the worst at this point. This was really when we weren't communicating. And around 18, I think I even moved out of my mom's house. I just couldn't do it anymore. We had to separate for a while and then kind of come back together. And we have a great relationship now. But I really relate to this movie because I think the mother character reminds me, honestly, a lot of my mom. I'm scared if she ever listens to this, she's going to get mad at me. She will. She'll be like, "You made me sound mean, and I can't believe this, and I'm a private person." Like, she is kinda like this character, but, she was very serious and very, like, I don't wanna say, like, balloon popping, but, when I would come up with these, like, really ridiculous ideas of where my life was gonna go, she would be like, "Yeah, that's nice. You should go to school and,
Mhm.
get good grades and consider your future," and, she was definitely if there's a good cop, bad cop with parents, she was the bad cop. And it took me a long time to appreciate that. So it's hard for me to watch this even now without like crying because it feels so familiar. Like,
Yeah.
and it's so beautiful just because I love the way that Greta wrote the mother character and how, you know, as a kid, you can't really see when somebody gives you tough love that it is love. But as you get older, you're like, man, that's a tough position to be in,
Yeah.
for her.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I don't think my mom was like that. So I just feel like I was like Ladybird in a lot of senses, where I was just like
In your bubble.
everything was a problem that I would just invent problems when I was at home,
Yeah.
and that's kind of more or less. I mean, granted, Ladybird had a more combative mother and stuff. They butted heads a lot more,
Yeah.
um, because her mom was just, I don't know. Her mom had a lot of
Your mom's
disappointments in her
scary.
life, and she didn't want her mom didn't want her to like suffer the same disappointments that she had. So
Yeah, plus her relationship with her mother was bad.
yeah, she mentions my mom was an
Yeah.
abusive alcoholic, and I'm like, oh, that puts everything kind of
It
together.
does. It's like she's actually an amazing, loving mom when you
Yeah,
think about what she's been through, but,
right.
it is a tough point in her life too, in the mom's life, and that's something as a teenager you could never grasp that
No,
anybody else is having a tough time
and
except
that's
you.
that's my biggest issue with the people that just like Lady Bird's impossible to deal with, yada yada. She should be grateful. Is Do you really think you were 100% grateful all the time when you were a teenager? Like, can these
Yeah.
people 100% tell me that, like, in all seriousness, without feeling like they're misremembering things? I don't really know. I don't know if I buy that.
Some of the other kids in the movie are, but it's because they've had a tougher time. Like,
Right.
the I guess the son I can't okay, so their son, he is, foster, right? Or is he fully adopted? I can't remember.
I just accepted him as adopted. I didn't
Okay.
really. I'm
I
probably
just
missed
couldn't
a detail
remember.
on it as I was writing notes or something.
No. But no, oh, you're fine. Like, I don't know. You're probably right. I just wasn't sure which one it was.
But I
But I
know that they
mean,
did take his girlfriend in because she had a
yes,
bad situation at
right.
home.
And so they are way more street smart, I think. They're
Hmm.
more aware of how life actually is and how
Right.
their parents could actually be, and instead they've got these two loving people that took them in when their family were not able to or did not do that.
Right.
So they have a different perspective than Ladybird, but that's because they're not in the bubble that Ladybird is, where her parents sort of insulated her
Yeah,
like
that's
a lot of
true.
our parents do, and so we never have to think about, where they came from and what they're going through until it's like we expect teenagers to just magically do that at 18. Like, okay, you're old enough now. Now you should just understand how things are. And it's like it takes time to get there. And
No, it
Ladybird does evolve as this movie goes on, but it takes time. Yeah.
took me a few years to appreciate, you know, I don't know, the things my parents, well, my mom, whatever, however you want to look at it, my parents both were doing for me. Because it was a couple of years after high school that I finally moved out. You know, I had all these missteps along the way. See, this is what I mean by the mom. The mom character wasn't my mom because my mom let me make my mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, my
um,
parents did too. I hope I didn't make my mom seem too harsh. Like I lived at home forever, which part of that could be because I'm Mexican too. But we don't leave. You know, if
you're
my
still there
dad
right
had
now.
his yeah, if my dad had his way, I would be. He used to say he was going to build me an extra room in the backyard, and I was like, nope, I'm sleeping. So get ready. But yeah, like you know, she certainly didn't kick me out or anything.
I just, yeah, I definitely didn't have the whole, you know, you need to do this in college and that in college. It was kind of like I had the choice of either doing college or not, and whatever happened was fine with them as long as if I didn't go to college, I had a job or something like that.
Oh, gotcha.
They were
Yeah.
just, they didn't really push that on me, which I respect, and at the same time, I kind of wish they did, you know, because
Yeah, I have friends that had stricter parents and they did do a lot better in school and they got further some like, "Hey, maybe you should have been meaner to me."
right.
But let's transition and talk about some of our favorite scenes in this movie.
Oh, I think my favorite one, bar none, is the. I mean, it has to be the coach trying to teach drama, right? Like,
I always forget about that part until I
right?
watch it again, and then I'm
Yeah,
like, "Oh my gosh, bless his heart.
it's
He's
the
trying his
funniest part
best."
of the movie. These white lines are singing. Yes, there's, and he's like squiggling.
This is really good.
789, you go, and the kids are like writing ferociously. It's so funny. And my understanding is Greta didn't really script that. That was a lot of that was improvised by the actor.
That
Um,
makes sense.
Most of what she does, and Noah Baumbach too, the way they write is every little line and beat is scripted, almost like a stage play. Um,
Oh.
so that was like the only thing they didn't really script. They just kind of let him go. But he nailed it. That was like my favorite scene, easily. Because I
Very
just
good.
didn't picture that ever happening. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something that you think. It's something you don't think you see on screen.
Yes, I agree.
Like
But
a
also,
sports
like,
coach using a
funny.
sports method to teach drama is so freaking ridiculous.
But I feel like that happened a lot in school, though, where, like, you know, coaches would end up in positions that they weren't
Hmm.
really qualified for.
Yeah, Greta mentioned something about she had a coach that taught math or something, and you're like, "This is
Yeah,
what? This is very confusing."
I definitely went to a school like that where things like that happened.
I at least had a coach that taught health,
See, that's close,
and
you
then
know, a
another that
little
taught
bit.
like Texas history or something like that.
Mm. Yeah, and I went to private school for some of the time, so but it was like a Protestant private school, so we definitely had chapel and all that good stuff too, but I never went to Catholic school, so Nick probably relates
Yeah.
more to that, my husband, since he went to Catholic school for a long time.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. My mom did too, but that was, you know, that was a long time. I'm, you know, definitely not going to relate to a mid 2000s movie
Yeah,
about it.
when we were kids, you know, it was more like, "Oh, if we send you to the private school, you'll get a better education." You know, so that's
I
funny.
imagine that's probably part of why her mom sent her there.
Exactly, it's like a huge sacrifice, especially for that
Hmm.
family because they are struggling financially, so and that's the
Right.
other reason why a lot of the kids that she's around are so much, more well off than she is. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. This movie has like an under. Is underbelly the right word? I don't know. Where it's almost like the slow death of the middle class, kind
for
of.
sure, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. I mean, it's some, like, Pretty in Pink stuff going on, but
Hmm.
more nuance than that, and, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and, like, that experience of, like, not really being able to afford to be there, but barely getting in, I mean, that was
Hmm.
my experience, and it was, some of my close friends that went to it was, like, their parents would work at the school or, you know, we would get some kinda scholarship so I could go, you know, things
Right.
like that, so, yeah, I think I never thought of it in that context, but, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
I can't remember if it was Greta that said that, or I think it was just a critic that made the parallel. But I think that was very conscious what Greta did to include all the talk about, um, or the scenes, I should say, of the parents together trying to work out how they're going to pay bills and the dad losing his job because this is like pre. crash or whatever,
Yeah,
2008.
2008 or yeah.
But things are still shifting
They
downward
are, yeah, wow.
at this stage in the 2000s.
Gosh, never thought about that, yeah.
So they definitely made sure to include that also as a means to stress where the mother's coming from.
Mhm. Yeah, she's under a lot of pressure in this movie, and that feels
Yeah,
pretty realistic too, like, I can think of times in my parents' lives where they were under a lot of pressure and I didn't realize it because I was a kid, and as an adult, I'm like,
no, yeah.
"Oh, I feel
My
that
mom would tell
pressure."
me that she would work overnight while she had three. There were three kids. There were three of us,
Yikes, wow.
and I. This is when I was like 2 or 3 or whatever. So my siblings were also very young, and they're all older than me, but they were also very young. So like she would work overnight, and my dad worked during the day. And now that I work overnight and I can just sleep because I'm single, I just have a dog, and he's on my schedule, so he doesn't care. Uh, now that I think about working overnight and just imagining having like three kids, I'm like, so you just never sleep then? Like, and she said she did it for years, like way longer than I've committed to the overnight shift.
Wow. Yeah, I can't
Um,
imagine.
yeah, so that's just something that you're totally blissfully unaware of as a kid. If I mean, if at least if your parents are like care about hiding that from you,
Mhm.
hiding that struggle from you,
Yeah, yeah,
you're just blissfully
absolutely.
unaware of that as a kid, unless they're the type of parents that just want to rub their sacrifice in your face all the time.
Which is terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're 5; they're not going to understand.
Don't you see what I'm sacrificing? Yeah, it's
Do
mean.
you not get it? What I do? It's like me explaining that to my dog.
Right.
Like, I mean, it wouldn't make sense.
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
You understand everything I have to do for my job? And he's like, I just was moving my bed
Yeah,
around.
he's like,
What's the
"I need my
problem?
kibble, that's about it." So, and then I'm happy.
Exactly. Oh man. So on I think second favorite scene has to be the opening, right? Like
Oh,
the car
yes,
scene.
that sold the whole movie to me.
It did,
I
yeah.
think people had told me to watch it, but then I saw that clip of that
Uh-huh.
happening, and I went, "Well, I'm gonna watch that right now." It's
Exactly.
so
And
good.
that's the best part of that. I love that was the opener of the movie because that was the thing in the trailer that pretty much sold it for me, even though I knew about the buzz because I was on Twitter, film Twitter, and stuff like that. All the critics were raving about the movie already, so I was already excited for it based on that. Because I will blindly follow critics. I don't care. I will do it. I will do it. And sometimes they're wrong, but
A lot of times
this
they're
time they weren't.
right, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the track record's really good.
Yeah.
Let's
Let's
be
be
honest
honest,
about
yeah.
that. But so that specific moment in the trailer because was I feel like that was selling it 100% because everything else in the trailer and oh my god, I was in the movie theater so much that year, especially because I was writing for a couple websites at that
Mhm.
time. Um, that I saw that trailer like I countless times, more than I can count on two hands. I would say. So I was really getting really irritated seeing that trailer pop up. I was like, oh my god, the freaking beats in this trailer are so annoying. Except for that car scene. That car scene was just so brilliant to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, and I love the way that it builds too, because I mean, you immediately see the difference between the two of them.
Mhm.
It's obviously it's generational, um, but like I don't know, mentally and stuff, because they finish like bonding and crying over this like audiobook
Which
or whatever.
felt very familiar to me. I remember so many road trips where we would listen to audiobooks like that, so I was like,
I literally
"Wow."
never did that. We always did music. We always pumped up like music everybody liked in our family,
Oh, that's nice.
which is normally classic rock or
No, it
something.
was always, like, books on tape for me. So I
I
really
kind
yeah.
of wish that we did that. Otherwise, because I'd probably be more of a reader if we did that.
Well, I mean, I'm not, so I want to
Oh,
be.
right.
I
I only
was,
read
I
books
guess.
like my friends write, and that's it. That's where I draw the
I
line.
joined a book club, during this whole pandemic thing. I'm trying, but, not I wouldn't
Oh, you
say
did?
yeah, well, my friend Kara put, like, a feminist book club together.
So they finished that audiobook and they're both emotional, and the mom is like, let's just sit with that. And that's such a generational thing to. I mean, I feel like
It
that's an older
is.
generation thing to sit there because, especially in the mid 2000s and onward, it only got worse. Kids are
Yeah.
definitely not going to focus on one emotion at one time. Like Now, because I've adapted to this too, you're just on social media all the time. You're always doing something. Sometimes you're doing two or
Right,
three things
right.
at the same time because of how much is going
Mhm.
on social media. Um, so just sitting there, that's just not an option. So of course her brain starts going to existential woe is me teenage stuff where it's like I wish I lived through something. It's such a great scene. That's such a great line to start with too. It's so dramatic. Oh man, it's like 9/11 just happened and she's saying I wish I lived through something. It's insane.
I remember, yeah, like, dating a guy that used to say stuff like that, that instead of having a job, he wished he lived in a time of, like, just, you know, where he could, like, go on adventures and do physical things and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, and I was like, "Oh my
I
god.
think she means she wishes she lived
Stop
through like
talking."
her possibly her mom's time of like the 70s and being a rebel.
Oh, gotcha,
Maybe
gotcha.
that's what she means, but when you think of it in the time that she's saying it, it's like 9/11 just happened. Like
It's, like, very tone deaf, yeah.
so bizarre. And but that scene is very telling of who those characters are. And who we're
Mhm.
going to be following the rest of the movie. And the way that they're over talking each other, I thought was brilliantly written. And it was all of that was like entirely written like the way that the timing of how they interrupt each other was like written
Oh, gotcha.
like exactly the way they say it. Um,
I
Greta and
love
Noah
it.
do that a lot. Like if you look at the Marriage Story script and stuff, like there's some examples of it on YouTube where they're talking over each other and stuff. All of that's written. Like Noah and Greta do that all the time in their scripts,
Wow.
and it's deliberate too. Like they're saying like good stuff. It's like you just go
Yeah.
back and watch it again and listen to the other side. Um, and yeah, and then of course it deteriorates into you couldn't get into those colleges anyway, which is such a brutal line, but it made me laugh like the first time I saw it. I was like, my God, who says that to their kid? Um,
I feel like my parents
yeah,
would, but
and it's honestly it's just a fact of life. And
It
even like her
is.
guidance counselor, which is another funny part, says it later when she's exploring colleges. And she's like, I want to go to like a Yale, but definitely not in Yale because I couldn't get into Yale. And she just goes, you definitely couldn't. It's such a funny moment. That was like the crux of the whole movie, I guess, was her saying, I need to go.
To this extremely expensive
Yeah,
Ivy League
she says
school.
at the very beginning of the movie, this is my journey, basically, in explicit words. I want to go where culture is, like New York. And then that's the whole movie is her trying to find a way to go to New York.
Yeah. It's amazing
Um,
that she's successful. I hate to say that, but
I know it is pretty amazing, but it isn't. It's like what an art school or something. It's not
yeah,
like
yeah, she's
a
not going to, like, yeah.
NYU
Yeah,
or
right,
something,
right.
right? It's not.
It's
But at the
attainable.
same time, New York's expensive, man. How? How? Just
I
how?
don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Her parents greatly sacrificed so that she could go there. That's all I can say.
It's amazing to me,
Yeah.
and I don't think she lasts a. If we're kind of speculating,
Yeah, I feel like she
she
drops
doesn't
out
last
in
a
a year.
semester there.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. There's no freaking way
No.
because I've been to New York
Yeah,
for like
same.
2 weeks, and I'm good.
Yeah, that would be a lot for somebody as sheltered as that character is to
Yeah,
experience.
it's just such a. You think you experience the city when you go to places like here in Texas, especially when you go to like San Antonio or Austin. And sure, yeah, there's some city elements there, but it's not. It's nothing like New York
I
City.
don't think anywhere is like New York City.
No, I mean nothing has been built like New York
Yeah.
City. Where it's just nothing but like high rises and
It's
stuff.
just intense. The energy is
It's
intense. And
yeah,
you
it's
know, Chicago,
it's a lot all the
Boston,
time.
LA, none of it's like New York. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty nuts. So I mean, I get the ambition to want to leave Sacramento for, which is at least Ladybird has decided is unromantic. It's an unromantic
Which
place.
is so funny to
So
me.
in your brain, Sacramento feels like to me because I live in Plano. Sacramento feels like the Plano of California a little bit.
Yeah, it's like when I was younger, I wanted to live in LA so bad. That was like my dream.
Yeah,
Everything was about getting the heck out of Texas and moving there.
hmm I
And
feel that.
so I can kind of relate. So for her, New York is kind of like that to her, where it's like the opposite of where she is.
Right.
So I get that, but it's like
I've
also
I've told myself I wanted to go to several locations, if I'm honest. Uh, but yeah, like I told myself I was going to move to Austin, LA at one point, sure, but I never was serious
It's
about it
very
because
expensive.
it's so expensive. I knew it would be. Even when I was thinking about it years ago, I knew it would be expensive. New York was one even after I visited. Um, it's just one of those because I was like in high school or something when I visited. After I visited, I was telling myself, I was an impressionable high schooler, so I was like, I'll totally live here, guys. I'm gonna live here one day. That's of course that didn't
I
happen.
mean, if you want to have 5 roommates.
Yeah, exactly, and everything's overpriced.
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's the same dilemma as LA,
Yeah,
but
but
it's
worse.
like slightly cheaper by like cents.
Yeah,
And it's just way more crowded.
right.
Um, and nothing against New York because I was born in New York. But in upstate, I was born in upstate New York where it's more tolerable and there's much much more beautiful sights. Not that New York City
Oh,
isn't
man,
beautiful
like,
in its own
now
way,
all the people
but I'm
from New
talking
York
like mountains and stuff.
they've turned it off. I'm just kidding.
Hey, yo, bippity boppity, what are you doing? I don't know. I can't do a New Yorker. Um, okay. I keep derailing
No,
from the
you're fine,
favorite
you're fine.
scenes. I don't even know where we left. So that car scene is great. To summarize,
It's good.
20 minutes later. Um, what is one of your favorite scenes? Because I have to probably go through my notes
I
now.
think one of my favorites, I'm gonna jump right to a really emotional scene to me, is I
Ooh,
really like the scene where they go dress shopping, for her prom, and there's a
that's
moment,
that's another one.
yeah, where
Yes,
she's in.
both dress scenes actually really dress shopping scenes really got. One of them makes me laugh, and the other one is just really
Yeah,
emotional.
I like the scene where she comes out and she's like, "I love this," and her mom says, "Is it too pink?" Because that was another very relatable. And then she's like, "This one's too tight." She's like, "I told you not to have that extra pasta," and it makes you kind of almost mad because it's like she's this skinny teenager that looks perfect, essentially. But I remember my parents saying similar things to me, like, or my mom at least. Your mom's always like, "Well, eat your vegetables."
Hmm.
But then the scene that really gets me is when they're kind of arguing and Ladybird says, "Do you like me?" And her mom pauses for a second and says, I love you, I love you so much. And she comes out and goes, "Yeah, I know, but do you like me?"
Yeah.
And that part hits me emotionally because I think that's something that parents can kind of forget when they're in
Hmm.
this sort of like combative, tough teenage years, is you're arguing and arguing and arguing with your teenager, and it's understandable because you're butting heads. But after a while, as a kid, you are like, do you like me, or do you just like hate me and put up with me? Like, and
Right.
that's a really tough moment for her. And then she says something, "I want you to be the best version of yourself," she says. And then
Hmm.
she goes, "What if this is it?" And then
Hmm.
she gives her that look like, "This can't be it," which is really funny, uh, because and then but then she's also kicking herself right after she does it, like, "Why couldn't I just say something nice to her?" You can tell that her
Yeah,
mom
yeah,
is
you can
like,
see it in her face.
"Why did
Yeah.
I do that? Why am I so defensive? Why am I so unable to show my daughter how much I
Laurie
love her?"
Metcalf is so good
Yeah,
to wear all that on her
yeah.
face. Um, that is another dramatic teen moment too, where she's like, "What if this is the best version of me?" And it's like, I would have almost laughed in her face if my kid said that to me. Like, just trust me. 10 years from now, you're not going to be the same person at all.
Yeah, but it's so hard to see at that moment because then you're saying
It's
you
true.
don't.
Yeah, when you're a teenager, everything not that everything's the end of the world, but it feels like you're close to it.
Yeah, for
So
sure. But
I've
that's
I know where she's coming from for sure because I've been there.
exactly, yeah, it's very
Not with
relatable.
my mom, but I've been there. I've felt that before.
Yeah. But that happens, and then there's another scene where she's, like, she's screaming at her to clean up her bedroom, because she gets in
Hmm.
late, and, the dad's like, "Come on, just let it go tonight," because she's not really mad that her daughter didn't clean her room. She's really upset
Of
that her
course not.
husband lost his job and that they're under so much pressure, and Lady Bird is
Yeah,
an easy target. She's a difficult
right.
teenager. They are already
They already
having,
butt heads.
yeah, so
Yep.
she turns around and just takes it all out on her daughter, and then, Lady Bird turns around and says, "Wasn't there ever a time when you forgot to clean up your room?" And I was like, "Man, I wish I was that smart when I was a teenager. I would have never even thought to say that." That is
That's the
such
thing.
biting, real
Yeah.
thing to say. I never my when I think about times where I butted heads with my parents, specifically over things like cleaning, and as an adult, I'm like, wow, they were under a lot of pressure, and that's probably why they were acting like that, because it seems so insane to me as a kid and so unfair. But for her to turn around and say, "Hey, have you ever been in this situation before?" I thought was so
Right.
smart. But then there's that really good line that we talked about earlier where she goes, "My mother was an abusive alcoholic." And then she thinks about it for a second and leaves. And it's like funny on two levels, because it's like, number one, she's thinking about that, but then number two, she sort of undercuts what Ladybird said, like, "Well, my
Yeah.
life was a lot harder, so I'm
Yeah,
still winning."
exactly.
I'm still winning this
Yeah,
argument.
exactly. It's like it's competition basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I. Oh man, I wish I had those lines, those types of lines in my pocket, ready to go too. But my arguments were much shorter because I was normally wrong, and I just kind of, accept, not accepted it, but eventually just learned to shut up
Yeah, well,
and take
Ladybird
it.
is a different kind of teenager, right? I mean, because that's
Absolutely.
another thing that I think makes the character kind of interesting and endearing is
Yeah.
her quick wit is almost a little too smart for her, even though she's so dumb at the same time. It's like this
Right.
interesting balance of those two things.
There's definitely it definitely shows that like at least Greta wrote her to be smarter than the average teenager,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
why she thinks that she can get into certain places.
Yep, yep, true.
Um, yeah, that's a great scene. And the one before it where they're either dressed or just regular clothes shopping. I'm pretty sure it's a dress because the prom's coming
Oh
up.
yeah, when they're at the thrift
Um,
store.
yeah, and they're arguing, but it's like lightly arguing.
Yeah.
And the mom, oh my god, she does this passive aggressive mom thing that I've experienced before myself. I'm sure we all have to some degree. Everybody can be passive aggressive in their own way. But it's just like, the mom's like, "Are you tired?" It's like, "No." "Oh, you're dragging your feet, so I didn't know if you were tired." "Mom," and then it kind of spirals into like a whole like teenager and mom argument, and but it's like a light one,
Yeah.
almost like a precursor to the big one where she's like, "Do you like me?" Um, and God, that's when she says, "You're so." It ends with, "You're so infuriating," and then she finds a dress and it's immediately like they forgot the argument was happening. And they're like, "Ooh, that dress is nice!" Like
So
immediately,
real. So real.
it's too real, too relatable.
Yeah, that's so good. Um
Because that's how it goes.
Absolutely. I also love we talked about Timothy Chalamet. The
Hmm.
boy that he is in this movie is so it's so funny because he thinks he's so brilliant and cool, and she thinks that at first. So he really plays that part really well. And I love the scene where he's like telling her, someday everyone's gonna have these cell phones. Where he goes, "Do you have a cell phone?" She's like, "No." He's like, "Good girl," which you're like, ugh. But
He's like, "You can be tracked or
yeah, and then
whatever."
he's
Yeah,
like, "That's one step before they put them in our brains." And she goes, and then he looks like so upset, and she looks at him for a second and goes, "Oh." I thought that was really funny. I really like that.
I think that should tell you, or at least her, that she's out of her element,
Yeah,
and these are the kids that she normally makes fun of for a reason.
yeah, and then
With Julie, um, because they're just so. I mean, they have these thoughts that just make no sense, but they're trying to sound profound.
yes, and he does that a
Um,
lot. Like you said
yeah,
later in the movie where he does this sort of like gaslighting thing where, they sleep together and
you're you're choosing to be
yeah,
mad.
you're choosing, which I swear to God, I heard that as a teenager from
It
guys.
made me so mad to hear that.
Uh,
Like, I'm like, oh, is this what women feel like? Ooh, is
yeah, like
this what they're talking about when the dudes gaslight them and stuff like that? Because oh my god, I would lose
I feel
it.
like it's less cool to do now, but when I was younger, like
Mhm.
even the scenario of him being like, "Oh yeah, it's my first time too," and then later going, "I never said that." Like that
Oh my
felt
god,
too real also. Not the
yeah,
exact same situation, but just guys being a little misleading and then turning around and going, "What? I never, huh?" And so she is understandably really upset about what happened, and then he starts bringing up how many people have died in like Iraq. I love
yeah.
that part.
And when she screams in
She's
his
like,
face, "Shut the
Shut
hell
the
up!" Oh my
hell up." She's
god,
like, "2 things can be said at the same time." And
yeah,
I love that so much. It was just so perfect because I'm like, I do feel like we're in a place now in our society where we can look back and be like, "This kid's a douche," but back then it was like, I do have to say, it is a familiar experience for me, at least.
yeah.
having those kind of conversations.
The two things can be sad at the same time thing is definitely a philosophy to carry over to many places on social media. I will just say that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because some
agreed.
people just can't seem to grasp having more than one thought at the same time.
Impossible. I mean, you're
Yeah.
being so emotional, you're choosing to be mad. Um, I love that.
That was so upsetting to oh man, he sold that brilliantly
Yeah, he's
too.
so good, and then I think the only redeeming thing that that character gets is when she's kinda storming out, and then she sees his dad asleep and clearly very ill, and she kinda
Hmm.
pauses for a second, thinks about it, and, yeah, I think that that enables her she breaks up with him, but she's at least able to be like, "Huh, he's going through some stuff."
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that that he was written to have something there
Yeah.
to help redeem him a little bit at least
Yeah.
cuz
Well
I mean, real people just can't you just can't be that person
but I'd like to think that a
with no
couple
explanation.
years later, he would be like, "Wow, I was in a really dark place and mean to everybody, and I grew from that." Let's
Mhm.
have a little ray of hope for that character.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Good grief. He's just in high school like everybody else
True,
though, so
true.
that's really what it is. Um I liked that Danny character by the way who was caught making out with a guy and he's gay.
Oh, he does such a good job.
Yeah, Lucas Hedges is so
I
good.
freaking love that guy, like, yeah, he's so good in this movie too. He plays that part perfectly,
Yeah, and that scene they have together when they're kind of like finally
talking about it.
like parting, you know,
Yeah.
it's like their final goodbye, and before they have like the embrace where he's crying and she's kind of crying too. She starts to well up too, but right before that, they're arguing about her mom.
Oh, yeah, "Your
And there's
mom's
a funny line
scary."
where she's like, "You can't be scary and warm,"
Yeah.
talking about her mom. I thought that was a really funny line, but yeah, that's just something like that's one of like the a good examples of like a scene where it's like, what would you do in that scenario? That's really like this dude that you or that she liked,
Yeah, that he led her
you
on, but
know,
unintentionally, and he's
right?
rich, like, he's the to bring it back to Pretty in Pink, he's the James Spader of the situation, but,
Hmm.
with a twist because he has, like, the perfect life, parents love him, he looks great on paper, but he's keeping this big secret from his family that would
Hmm.
basically make him an outcast. It would remove all his privileges almost, or
Right.
could potentially.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at a Catholic school, and especially,
Yeah, and it seemed like there
so
was something
like,
in the
yeah, that
future.
hug was just like so heartbreaking on two levels, like for him and for her, because it was like she finally, it was like at least on her face, it said that she understood what he was going
Oh,
through,
for sure, like, I think
like she finally
before
grasped what was
she felt
happening.
like he was just intentionally deceiving her and using her and
Hmm.
didn't care about her, but in that moment, I mean, she realized that he cared about her deeply as a friend, and he didn't have anyone to turn to. So, she
Yeah,
decided to kind of, in that moment, be that person, and their friendship is better for it after that. And he even says later in the movie, like, "I miss all you guys," and I think it's true. He missed her family and friends and being there and being with her. He just wasn't romantically interested in her.
yeah, that was man, that scene is so good.
Yeah.
Those two together are just so good. Um, oh, you mentioned the Kyle argument right before that when they're doing it, and Kyle's orgasm is like
Yeah.
he just goes, huh. It's just a sigh,
I love how
and he puts his arms out like he's Jesus or something. It's so
And I
ridiculous.
love how disappointing it is for her, and she goes,
Yes.
"I wanted it to be special," which I felt that because
Yeah.
growing up, especially growing up religious, that was something that's always sold specifically to women, like, "You've gotta really
Hmm.
wait because it's gonna be so special." It's like,
Right.
instead of giving people, like, sex education and the tools to have, like, good relationships, and make well-informed decisions, you're just told, "Well, don't worry, the wait is worth it. It's gonna be so special." And I love that she says that and how naive that sounds like to an adult, but
Yeah.
how relatable that sounds to a teenager, especially a teenage girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. But
Yeah, that's it's so true
it
though.
is. It's like,
Um,
spoiler alert,
it's
some of the relationships you're in when you're young are not going to end up seeming that special to you, but you don't want to
and
tell
he
a
does,
teenager that.
and he's giving her like the thing is with Kyle too. He says a lot of things that are true, but you shouldn't really be saying them in the moment.
Right, right, right.
But because he says you're going to have a lot of unspecial sex in your life, and it's like, yeah, that's true,
It's so
but
cynical too. It's really
pick a
funny.
moment, bro. Like, pick a moment.
I think he's just so disappointed with life in general that he's
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
like see something for what it is that a teenager that's full of ambition and hope isn't. This makes being an adult sound really sad. I don't mean it to, but I'm just saying you have perspective as you get older that he's kind of unfortunately already got because of what he's going through with his dad, I think.
yeah. That's probably informing a lot of what he's saying.
Yeah.
And then right after that, is this the? I'm trying to think. Yeah, this is after the Ladybird and the mom have the argument where the dad's playing solitaire on the computer. About when she gets suspended, and Ladybird does the whole "give me a number so I can pay you back for everything you
Another
give me, and
brilliant
never have to
line.
talk to each other."
Another brilliant line. Why didn't I think of
Yeah,
that? So many arguments
it's
about
I know,
that.
right? It is.
I could have
It
said
also at the
that.
same time, it's a very high school thing and dramatic thing to
It
say because
is.
like of course you're going to talk to your mom again. Get out of here.
But it's also true that you can't hold that over your kids' heads. I mean, both things are
Mhm.
true. When she says that to her parents, I think most kids have felt that at one point in their life when their parents are really selling to them, like, "Do you know how much I sacrificed? Do you know what I've done?" It's like, okay, but I didn't make you do that. It's
Yeah,
like there's nothing I could do to repay that anyway. Um,
that's so
yeah,
true.
and
That's so
so I
true.
think it's brilliant on both levels, but also, yes,
Yeah.
an extremely dramatic thing to say. I'll never talk
Right,
to you
very.
again.
The
How
tiny
she
moment
feels.
of the dad, where they've already kind of established that he's dealing with depression,
Mhm.
and he's been dealing with it even when he was employed and stuff, and but the unemployment's making it
Oh, for
worse,
sure.
and how he's just kind of phoning like in the parenthood part by just playing solitaire on the computer.
Yeah.
But the imagery of him just like like they're in the middle of or about to start a big argument with Ladybird, and and the image of like the mom breaking like breaking her train of thought to be like, can you help with this? And he's like, sorry. I
Yeah.
don't know what it was that made me laugh about that moment.
Yeah, he's not, like, emotionally available enough to deal with it, and
Right.
to Ladybird, that seems like, "Dad's perfect and is always on my side," and it takes her a long time to realize he's just emotionally unavailable right now because of what he's
Yeah,
going through,
exactly.
not.
He's dealing
Yeah,
with so
yeah.
much. But the scene, so this scene with Kyle, where they kind of break up, well, they're still going to go to
Yeah,
prom
which
together,
is
but
weird, she shouldn't have done that to
But
him.
they have that big blow up, and even after that, Ladybird goes in the car, and the mom picks her up, even though it was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be your brother or something. Um, but even then, Ladybird cries, and the mom's like holding her and stuff,
Yeah, that's
and
really
it's like
sweet.
nothing happened earlier.
That's
It's just such a good
that's
moment.
that's what parenting must be like, because I remember
Yeah,
things
for
like
real.
that. Can we talk a little bit
Just let it go.
about Julie? Who's Julie?
Who's Julie? That is such a funny. It's so funny to me because it's a little ridiculous, but also, I mean, if you're a self-centered teenager, it makes all the sense in the world that you don't know who Julie is, even though she sits like right behind you in so many classes.
I mean, that sums up Julie's existence,
Yeah,
unfortunately,
it really does.
in high school. She's the invisible best friend, always
Hmm.
always ever the cheerleader, always on your side, and never really appreciated for it. Like, there's so many times she undercuts even the small victories that Julie gets, like when Julie gets that role in the play and she doesn't or is lower on the call sheet. Remember that? And she's
Hmm.
kind of like all upset, and Julie has to be like, "Oh yeah, you deserved that." It's like so sad. She can't
Yeah,
enjoy
there's
it.
other
Yeah.
things too that are at least recognizable to me that Lady Bird does, where she's like, I'm fat,"
Oh
or
yeah.
I need to lose weight," and you're saying that in front of like Julie, who is like, I mean, I am that person that Julie is, like I am, I guess, quote unquote, fat or whatever you want to call it nowadays. So I've been that person where you have somebody that's like, you can see with your eyeballs, somebody that's in shape, like healthy, and they're like telling you,
Yes.
I'm fat or whatever, and you're like, can you not in front of me? Like that's where my mind
I
goes.
was thinking if I made a TikTok, it would be about all the dumb things people said to me that were along those veins,
Yeah.
saying things like, "Oh, where'd you get that shirt? Oh, I got it here. Ah, nothing fits me there. Everything's like sized up 3 sizes and just like it's for bigger people." And
Uh, yeah, that makes you
I
feel
was like,
great. Thanks. Appreciate
"Okay."
it. Yeah.
And like people would say things like that a lot. But anyways, yeah, she says a lot of things like that to Julie. There's that scene too where she brings her lunch and she's like, "I'm gonna diet," and she's like, "Oh, okay." So sad. And then she has that crush on that teacher that she
Yeah.
thinks is, like, legit, and then, of course, he's just being a really nice
Of course,
teacher that
he's just being a nice. Yeah, I mean that's just a high school crush situation. It's so funny that everything can kind of be like I don't know, summarized as well. They're just high schoolers.
Ye
That's
pretty
just
much. Yeah, like, he didn't do anything to lead her on, she just, like,
no.
saw something that wasn't there because she's lonely, and then, I like the part where, she ditches the cool kids that weren't gonna go to prom, and she was like, "Well, I did wanna do that," so he drops her off at her friend's house,
Yeah,
and
when she finally answers the question, "Who is Julie?"
yeah,
Because that's
my
been an
best
ongoing.
friend.
Yeah, she's my best friend. Now she knows what like real friendship feels like. Now that she's traveled outside of that
Yeah,
bubble.
exactly. And she gets there, and poor Julie is just sobbing on the sofa alone,
Hmm.
and she's like, "Oh, no, are you sad?" And she's like, "Some people just aren't wired to be happy." I just really like that line too.
I do too.
And then they get dressed up. She had a dress secretly this whole time, even though nobody asked
Right.
her. And and then they both go and have an amazing, almost Romeo and Michelle moment at the dance, and I really like that too.
Yeah, that was yeah. I like that they wrapped that up nicely. That was like the only aspect of it that was like remotely like coming of age cliche is
Yeah, and almost
like the two
unforgivable.
people reuniting that kind of had a rift or whatever.
Yeah, and, like, the way she was treating Julie the whole movie, like, some of the other stuff I could kinda let go, but I didn't like that, and I'm glad
Hmm.
that she wrapped that up and realized, how her friend was feeling and stuff, because
Yeah,
she
she
kind of
definitely
created the situation where her friend felt that bad. It was kinda her fault
right.
directly, so
Their argument though, when they were at their peak maddest at each other, is so funny.
yeah.
There is no role of the Tempest. It's just so freaking funny. They just do that so everybody can participate. And then the whole "too bad decisions" line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're saying things. Well, I mean, at least Julie's saying things that are very true.
Yes.
Um, to Ladybird, where she's like, "You can't do anything without making it about yourself," which you could argue for. I would say most of the quote unquote cool people in the high
For
school.
sure.
The only exception really being Julie,
Yeah.
who's kind of like a doormat for
I
everybody.
know, and, like, everyone else's support,
Hmm.
yeah, poor thing.
Oh man, it's a great role for Beanie Feldstein though, and
Yes.
she really gets a chance to shine in Booksmart. That's such a great
Oh,
movie.
yeah, she's so good in that movie, I love that.
I kind of want to watch
I
it again after I
know,
watch Ladybird. I was like, you know
because
what?
it's kinda like
I
an evolution of that character almost.
kind of she's just out of her shell entirely.
Yeah.
Um, dang. Okay, now I got to refer to my notes again. I can get lost in when we go out of order because it's the best scenes are out of order.
No, it's fine.
Oh my god, when Ladybird passes a driver's test and he's like, she goes thanks, and he's like, it's not really a thanking situation. You either pass or you don't.
"Yay." That's what she says
Uh,
after, she goes, "Yay."
she does. Yeah.
Still
So
celebrating by
she's so
herself, I
awkward.
know.
This is how awkward she's going to be in real life
Yeah.
situations without parents around. And then her when she turns 18, buying cigarettes, a lotto ticket, and was it a Playgirl?
Yes.
And then she's like outside the
Just
convenience store smoking and reading it.
so awesome. And she tells that guy, "I'm 18, that's why I'm buying all this, it's my birthday." And he goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
happy birthday." It's like, doesn't really have a lot to add to that, he just
He doesn't really
yeah.
care. Like it's just funny when you're the lead character of your own story and you have been for so long and so self-involved. And anytime she's out in the real world, she's starting to see glimpses of people not caring about any of that, of anything she has going
I
on.
love that you said that because that sums up, I think, honestly, at least for me, that age. And then
Hmm.
also her character is she is the main character and everybody else is peripheral to her being center
Yeah.
stage. And her journey in this movie is realizing that, she's not the main character, even though she is
Right.
technically.
Right. So she thinks she's trying to figure stuff out now. She's going to have a whole lot of other stuff to figure out when she's like out in New York,
Yeah.
you know? And we see glimpses of that at the end. Where she still doesn't even like she goes back to Christine, and then she lies about where she's from, so she's lying about something else.
Mm-hmm.
So she's still like figuring out everything,
And
like
she ends up in the
in the
hospital.
moment in one interaction.
And then
What?
she drinks so much she ends up in the hospital.
Yes.
And I love when she wakes
It's so
up and there's
funny
that kid.
that I think the nurse even says like, "You're just drunk"
Yeah,
or something like
she
that.
doesn't even have alcohol poisoning. She's
No,
just
she's
drunk.
just threw up. She's never had that happen before.
Yeah, because it would be a darker story if it was like this was the beginning of my
Right.
alcoholism. But no, she just got drunk one time.
Exactly. It's such a yeah. The ending was where I was like really cold on. I felt like the movie had like 15 minutes more to go or whatever. When I first saw it, I should say when I first saw it. But then when I heard Greta talk about the ending and how she said, she wanted it to end with Ladybird or Christine, whatever, finally being grateful for everything her mother has done for her and tried to shield her from everything that's going on in the real world,
Yeah.
more or less, and trying to shield her from disappointment.
Well, there's a
Um,
yeah, there's several things I like about that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I'm
yeah,
interrupting.
no, and then the very end where it kind of like ends on a breath is like Greta's intent there was like her inhale was like I don't know. I don't know how to describe that part, but the exhale was supposed to be the start of like a new life for her.
Yeah.
So that's why she ended the credits. She ended with the credits right before the exhale.
Oh, I get that.
And I thought that was like a brilliant freaking thing.
Yeah.
And that changed my perspective on the ending entirely.
Well, I
But yeah, that phone call was like a whole. I was still coming down. The first time I saw it, I was still coming down from the mother crying driving to the airport.
yeah,
I was very emotional at that scene. And
me
then
too. Yeah.
when she's like leaving the mom a voicemail talking about how she can relate to her on this level, on this tiny little level of like
Driving
driving
around.
around San
Mhm.
Francisco. I'm like, oh great, I'm emotional again. Like it's
Yeah. Well, the mom, she kept saying the main reason why she didn't want her to go to another school is because it's so expensive, which was partially true, but what she really wanted to say was she didn't want her to leave her. And so when they drop her off at the airport, she makes this kind of snide remark like, "Well, I can't park and see you off because that's too expensive, and look how much money we're spending on your
yeah.
school." It's just one more jab at Ladybird,
Hmm.
and Ladybird looks at her for a second, then slams the door, and then the mother has a change of heart, drives back in, tries to run in. The daughter's already gone, and the dad is like, "She's coming back." And that's when you finally realize, oh, the main thing the mom was upset about was the daughter leaving, not necessarily the money.
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, you're right. So you're kind of reeling from that. Then the funny drunk night happens. And I love when she wakes up and there's that little boy that's injured, like people that actually need to be at the hospital.
Right.
She's kind of like realizing, like, wow,
And I think it was right after that she goes
the
to the
church.
only place that she's familiar with from
Exactly.
Sacramento is a Catholic church,
That's what
right?
I was gonna
And
say is she spends the whole movie just, kind of not dissing religion, but just
yeah, but she's kind of tired of.
yeah,
She's
she's
over it.
over it. And then at the end, maybe she's not necessarily religious again, but she is missing a piece of home. And so she goes to church and it makes her feel a little bit better. And then she calls her parents. And it's just really sweet way to end the film is for her to kind of like her mom. Her mom wrote that letter because she couldn't. Oh, and her mom wrote the letter and didn't even want to send it to her. So her mom is
Hmm.
so emotionally guarded that she couldn't even finish a
She
letter.
couldn't finish it.
And the dad
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, she doesn't know you have those letters, and my your mom was worried you judge her grammar." I was like, "What?" And she was like, "No." It's like she's that afraid to be vulnerable in front of literally anyone. I just thought that was really
Hmm.
interesting. And then so she calls her, kind of does the same thing, leaves a voicemail. Doesn't tell her face to face, doesn't tell her even over the phone. She leaves her voicemail, very similar to the letter. So I like that end cap for it a lot.
Yeah, that's true. And they're gonna. I mean, because the movie is grounded in reality, in real life. I mean, they're gonna talk again.
Oh, for sure.
So I mean, because you can't just not talk to like I mean when their relationship is like it is in the movie, I mean, they're clearly going to talk to each other again. That's not. It was never to the point where they're never going to talk to each other again.
Yeah.
They just gotten in some heated arguments. That's all it is.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's just they're it's a big transition in Lady Bird's
Yeah.
life, and it was tough on her mom, and her mom doesn't have like the emotional language to deal with it, so that's how she deals with it. She argues with her, you know.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's very. Oh, one last thing. If we end up wrapping up, I know we're kind of towards the end of the movie, but this is a little out of order.
Yeah.
The abortion scene.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's like, man, can you imagine ever being that brazen in high school? There's no way, but um when the teacher makes that comment and then she says, "Well, if your mother had aborted you, we wouldn't have to sit here and listen to this." I thought that
Right.
was hilarious.
Oh my
It's so
god.
bad, like, my parents would have kicked me into the next dimension. But
Yeah.
and then also the thing with the nun just married to Jesus. When the nun later is like, I'm not you're not in trouble." I thought it was really funny. It was such a,
Yeah.
like, honest adult moment.
Yeah. She's like me and the whatever other sisters laughed about it or
Yeah, she's like,
whatever.
"We thought it was funny," which I feel like teachers probably do that a lot, but they have to discipline you, but in reality, they're like, "This is pretty funny, though." Um, and she's like, "And it wasn't just married, it was actually 40 years." And she's like, "He's a lucky guy." I was like, I wish I was that clever as a teenager. It's just really, really
Yeah,
funny.
for real. She's almost written too clever for her own
Yeah,
good. But I think that they had to make her believably like
funny.
at least smart and witty for her to qualify to think she can qualify for kind of like bigger colleges.
Yeah, and for her to kind of for us to like her, I think, too. Yeah,
Hmm.
because she does a lot of dumb
Yeah, that's true.
things, so it's like, give her some moments of intelligence. Yeah.
What was the first scene that you meant? Because there was something I wanted to add on to that first scene that you mentioned.
The very
Because you
first
mentioned the
scene.
nun thing, but the one right before that.
The one with the abortion.
Oh, the abortion. Oh my god. So it was during a Q&A that Greta mentioned this. That like somebody was like talking about. Somebody asked a question about the big arguments that Lady Bird and Mom have, and she was like, I don't think the mom was like out of line at all with getting that upset with Ladybird for getting suspended. She did just tell another woman she wishes she was aborted.
Yeah, like, regardless of her stance on abortion, what
Yeah,
she said was too far. Not
yeah, exactly.
yeah, agreed, agreed. Very funny.
It's like when you think of it, this grand scheme of things, it's like the mom's not wrong for yelling at her like at
Yeah,
all.
it's like,
So-
feminism aside, like, she shouldn't have told someone they should have been aborted, like,
right.
it's not it's not okay,
Oh man.
but so funny.
I like the scene where the dad goes for the interview,
Oh,
and the
that part hurts
interviewer.
me.
Yeah, that's another like middle class type. The generation. Yeah, the middle class kind of changing
Mhm.
slash the generational gap here, where the dad is doing it was supposed to be interviewed, and the young guy is so much younger that he's like doesn't even have a clue how to conduct the interview.
Yeah.
Like it's the young guy is just like cracking jokes, like, "Oh man, they fired you, and then they closed, so like that serves them right." And he's like making like bro jokes almost.
Yes, and
And then after that, the young guy goes, "So what's next?" And he's like, "So I think we should go over what the job is." And then they see the son show up at the end, and the dad is very encouraging. Um, that entire sequence was just like a different version of heartbreaking than like the airport driving
well, I
scene.
also
But
feel like the older I get, the more I feel like the dad, you know?
yeah, yeah,
When
I feel it.
in
Yeah,
interviews, you're like, "I have all these years of experience," and they're like, "Okay." Mm.
I feel like every year more and more I start identifying more with the parents in this movie.
Yeah.
Even though I've been there as like the high schoolers in
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
There's another scene. Crap, I had it right in front of me.
I think I'm trying to think of who we haven't talked about yet, maybe the theater teacher?
I think they did perfect casting for Jenna, the popular girl.
Oh, yes.
Um, when Jenna asks her name, she's like Ladybird, and her delivery of "weird"
Yeah,
was just
weird.
perfect. Oh, the last thing I had that I want to talk about was the music,
Oh, yes, the
because
soundtrack
Greta
of our
worked so
lives.
hard to secure those
Oh,
songs. Like she
really?
wrote personal letters to Alanis Morissette and Dave Matthews and Justin Timberlake, and she was like,
Wow.
please let me use your music for this movie that I'm doing. It would really mean a lot to me, and it means a lot to these characters. Yada yada. So it's like she really worked hard to get that music
I didn't
secured,
realize that.
and the Dave Matthews Crash thing, like, and that being like the butt of a joke, and then the turning point for Ladybird to be like, yeah, I actually like that song.
Yeah.
That's Greta. That's like 100% her.
Oh,
Like
wow.
she loves that song, and she saw Dave Matthews when she was like that age. She saw him
But
live.
that's such a relatable thing too of, like, being
Yeah,
with the cool kids and then hating on something you like and you having to sit there and then finally you're like, "You know what? I actually love that." So I guess I'm the stupid idiots you're talking about. She's It's
yeah,
such a good moment.
it is. It really is. And I've been in songwriting classes and stuff like that, especially recently. And and don't get me wrong, like I'm probably the oldest one there, so I would expect kids to have opinions that aren't necessarily informed yet. But there's at least been at least one person each semester that's like, when we listen to like a pop song, like a Bruno Mars song, and they'll be like, he didn't even write it. Ugh. It's like eight other people wrote it. Ugh. And it's just an uninformed opinion thing to say. Like, of course he freaking wrote on it. He's credited as writing on it. Like, do you not understand how the crediting works?
No, they don't.
Um, and also, like, it's like two other people wrote on it. It's not just, of course, Bruno Mars got co-writing help, but also we're in songwriting class. We are literally co-writing with each other.
Well,
What do you
the
mean? What do you mean you can't co-write? So it's just young people haven't changed, man. They still have opinions like that.
well, the one that gets me the most that I it's like these videos are fun and everything, but I kind of hate them, are the ones that are like every pop song actually sounds the same and they like prove that like there's a formula to like creating a hit song. And I want to be like, no shit. Like, there's only so many different sounds out there. That's real life.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you've cracked the code. It's almost like saying, "Hey, every, book you've ever read is a version of a different book you've already read." Yes, you're right.
Well.
That doesn't prove anything, to be honest. And so every time I see that, where they're like, all these rock songs are the same, all these pop songs, all these country, I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
there's, I'm sure, a science behind what sounds good to us. Congratulations, you figured it out.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, being reductive doesn't necessarily mean it's not good.
Exactly,
Suddenly,
yeah.
sorry,
It's like,
it doesn't make you smarter than the
yeah,
music
it's like,
too.
I
So
cracked the secret code. It's like, I don't think it's a secret. I think people go to school to figure out how to write things and make things that people like.
what I respect more is when music theorists or whoever people that just know theory in general will like make a compilation or like a medley
Oh, yeah, I love
of
that.
it'll be like four chords, right? And it'll be every pop song that has this specific four chord structure.
Mhm.
And some of these medleys are like 10 minutes long because there's that many pop songs that use one chord structure.
Right, but it's not like
Um,
criticizing it, it's more like, "Have you noticed this?"
yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yeah,
It's more like this is
but some
interesting,
of
and
them are like,
it's actually really cool.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, but and you'll see me on the side of most of the time when I see lawsuits about like so and so ripped off so and so song, you'll see me on the side of this lawsuit's pointless
I
because there's only
agree.
so many notes in
I'm
music.
so glad you
Like,
said that. I watched, like, another video the other day where they were like, "Uh-oh, this new song by Bella Porch sounds like this other song by, another artist," and they played it, and I'm like, "Those songs don't even sound the same."
yeah,
Like, at all.
there was one that Katy Perry was just a part of that sounded nothing like the one that a rapper was suing her for,
Yeah, it's like,
and it
"This is
was
a stretch,
laughable.
y'all. It's a stretch."
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was thrown out or whatever.
Yeah,
But
they almost always
whenever
are.
that cases like that have to be thrown to a jury, I get really frustrated because
The jury doesn't
the jury
know.
has most of them don't have any foundation in music theory, and it makes no sense to have to explain it to them, and they still won't understand what you're saying because music theory is very confusing when you first learn about it.
Yeah.
So, like, to have somebody that knows music theory explain to you, well, here's where the notes are different and where the key is different, and like they can explain it to you mathematically, and the jury will still be like, yeah, but my ears are playing tricks on me, and they think they're the same.
But, yeah, they usually lose, thankfully, so but
Yeah,
yeah.
unless it's like was it Marvin Gaye who sued um, Robin Thicke
Oh, I don't know.
for the Blurred Line song?
That one did sound crazy similar, though.
Was
I
it?
think so. I think that
I
particular one I was like, "Ah, yeah, I don't know."
I think there was the Sam Smith and Tom Petty one was the most famous
Oh,
one, and it
wow.
was at the point where Sam Smith was like, "Oh, whoops, I didn't even make the connection."
Well,
And
that's another thing is you could
I don't even think they ended up doing a
absolutely
lawsuit.
do that.
Sam Smith just said, "All right, I'll just give you co-write credit." Then, like,
Yeah, because
he just said whatever, or they just said,
it's
"Sorry, so sorry."
impossible not to be, like, influenced by things you like, so I mean, that's another
Hmm.
aspect of it too that I think people forget.
Yeah, it's at the same time. Sometimes it's just parallel
Yeah,
songwriting.
for
Like,
sure.
there's only so many. I mean, I feel like sometimes I'll finish a song and I'll be like, I feel like the song I sent you, the new song. I feel like I just ripped somebody off, but I don't know who yet. Like, I
I
feel
don't
like I'll
think
listen
so,
to a
but
song
I'm
maybe someday
probably
and be
not.
like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's who I ripped
I
off."
mean, I'm probably not the
Um,
most well-versed and stuff like that, but I don't think so. I didn't listen to it and go, "Oh my god, this is X song," you know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank God. Uh, I do have those fears though of like maybe someday somebody's going to be like this. Well, I'm not famous enough to do that, but
Yeah, wait till you're really famous, then you can start worrying
right,
about that.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. So anyway, Dave Matthews Band. That song Crash, especially for me at that age. That's I mean that pushed this movie over the edge for me because like I related to that hard when I was
Mm,
in high school. I was listening to that and many of his other albums or his band's other albums, and because I was just learning guitar, and Crash was like one of the first songs I learned on guitar. So like that brings me way freaking back, and I used to play it at open mics and stuff. Like, yeah, I have a history with that song.
oh, that's really nice. That's a good, like, connection.
Yeah, that was really. It was really funny to me that it was in the movie the first time I heard it or the first time I
You're
watched it.
like,
I was
"No
like,
way."
no way. Also, if you guys are into mid 2000s nostalgia, watch Pen 15 on Hulu.
Oh, yeah,
It's
I've heard
really,
that's really good.
really funny. So freaking funny. It hurts. It's the two main women that are in it also created the show. And I said women, like they play their younger, like 14-year-old
Yes.
selves and they're 30. It's so freaking funny. Like they're literally my age and they're playing like their 15-year-old selves or whatever it is. And it's really, really funny. There's just so much stuff that they throw out there, like in regards. There's a whole episode around that revolves around AOL Instant Messenger,
Oh my
and I'm just
gosh.
like, man, nostalgia chills for days. Like I just couldn't
Yes.
believe I was seeing that on screen again in like first time in years.
Yeah,
Like hearing the door opening, closing sounds and stuff like that. Like,
hilarious.
good lord. Um, but yeah, if you're kind of close to our age, watch this and
Yes,
that.
yes.
If you're this far in the episode and you haven't seen Ladybird yet, also, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Were there any scenes that we missed on your list? I think you said that was okay.
I wrote down a lot of notes, and a lot of them are like excess and have no bearing. It was just like stream of consciousness as I was watching it. So like, oh, fun tidbit: Being Alive is in this movie. I think it's Lucas Hedges' character, or it might be just some random extra, is singing "Being Alive" at the very beginning of the auditions for the play
Oh, yeah.
or the musical. And "Being Alive" is famous more famously in Marriage Story, which I thought was a fun
Oh,
connection.
interesting. I didn't realize that.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I
and
remember that
Adam
part.
Driver is like that's like a famous like not, I don't want to say famous, but that's what the movie's most like known for, I
Right.
guess, is Adam Driver going up on a microphone and singing that song
That's
all the way through.
that's right.
And that's a great moment too. God, I love that movie so much.
It's good, it's good. Um,
And also the musical stuff was taken very seriously by Greta because she was a theater kid.
ooh.
So she like did all of the rehearsal stuff for a very long time with the cast, so they could make it look legit, even though it ends up being like 30 seconds of the movie.
But it did feel pretty real.
It did. It felt so real, and she thought the humor in the musical part was like the fact that it's a very serious adult theme musical about like there's like alcoholism and stuff in it,
Yeah.
and it's just kids, like they're just kids singing about it, and it's she thought that was like the funniest part of it. Um, and I didn't even realize that because I wasn't even paying attention to the songs. I just thought it was really silly what they were doing up there.
Yeah.
It had a very High School Musical feel to it,
Yes.
the way that they were acting and like
Overacting. Yeah.
overact. Yeah, overact. They were cheesing it. All of them were like cheesing it up big time, and it was. brings back a lot of memories for this theater kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just love this
I
movie.
do too. I'm glad. I was happy to revisit it. I've watched it a few times, and I can comfortably
Same.
say that. And it, I felt the exact same way I did the first time I saw it. I think I
Hmm.
picked up on more things, but the emotional beats were just as intense. I think Greta Gerwig is really good at that. I
Yeah.
experienced some of that also watching Little Women. There's something about Bob Odenkirk tearing up and being like, "My girls!" I was like, "Oh my god, I'm crying at Bob Odenkirk talking to these little women."
Random Bob
Yeah,
Odenkirk. That is
I
such a
was
good
such a
moment,
surprise.
though.
But yeah, I just think the emotional beats, what she does with the mother characters in her movies, just really good.
Hmm.
But if you had to sum it up, what do you think about this movie resonates with you the most? Like, why do you think you keep returning to it?
Um, it's really hard to say. I guess it's a combination of things. I think it's the mother daughter relationship and the performances being as strong as they are,
Yeah,
and the nostalgia for that time period. Even though I didn't go to Catholic school, it was still that general time period. I mean, I lived through that, so at that age, no less. Well, close to that age.
yeah,
I was like 14 or 15 or whatever, so I wasn't close to graduating like she was, but. Um, yeah, I just something about Greta Gerwig, the way she writes and makes films, just totally works for me. I haven't seen Little Women again yet, and I feel like I should. But this one, according to Letterboxd, I've seen it like 7 times.
oh
So
wow.
I can't stop. I can't stop watching it. It's just so
It
good,
is good.
and it flies by, dude. Like
It
I
does.
normally check how far along of a movie I am every now and then when I'm watching it, just to see, because Apple TV tells you here's when the movie ends.
Oh
It'll give
yeah,
you a
I do
time.
that too, where you like pause it just to
And
see.
this the first time I did it for this movie was like when I had 10 minutes left.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, this movie just flew
it
by.
really
Like it really,
does. The pacing's
it's one of the
really
best
good.
paced movies I've seen in a long
It
time.
is, especially for an indie film, it's really, really good.
Yeah,
Because I feel like that's something people point out about like first time directors, indie film. The pacing is
it's
really
gonna be
fast.
slow
Yeah.
or whatever.
Um yeah, for me, I was already candid earlier. I really related to the parents with a healthy dose of realism. Again, mom and
Hmm.
dad, if you're listening, you both encouraged me a lot as a kid with art and going to theater class and things like that. But they also gave me a healthy dose of reality. And
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more real than some parents, and over time that's only become funnier to me, and so I think those parts of
Hmm.
the movie are just even funnier to me because of that. um and maybe some of the
That's probably a good thing though, because kids, when you're a kid, you don't get it.
yeah,
There's no way, so they have to like repeat themselves. Like, no, it's not. It's not going to be everything you
right.
dreamed of. I promise
And
you.
for me, I think some of it too was, my parents both spoke Spanish as a first language, and so they had some
Oh.
barriers to get through, and I think they were over serious about my education, my life because of that.
Right.
And so some of the, I guess, more gentler parents that are like, "Oh, you're a genius, just do whatever makes you feel good," like my parents weren't like that. They were like, "No, life's hard." But
Yeah,
yeah,
priority is life's hard. Second priority is, you can try to do what you
I
want.
think the most complimentary thing I got in regards to like creative stuff is I remember I was so proud of being in a play when I was like, 14 or 15, in like a theater
Hmm.
class. And my mom was like, "You know what? You kept saying that you wanted to act." And I was just like, "No, but today that was really good." I was kind of like,
That's a
"Thanks."
good way. That's a great way to pay a compliment. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Yeah.
Today it was better than before. But I still think about that and laugh. Anyway, what is your theater pitch for this movie? Or why do I keep saying that? What is your elevator pitch for this movie?
If I had to pitch it in
Yeah.
theaters, no, I'm just kidding.
If
Um,
you had to pitch a baseball, yeah.
this one's really tough to pitch. I don't know if I would pitch it to somebody that's like a whole 10 years or 20 years older than me. Don't get me wrong. There's film critics that did love this movie that were around that age. So I don't. Ugh, it's really, really tough to predict who I would pitch this to. So it really depends. But if you have a weird nostalgia for mid 2000s stuff, hey man, do I have the movie for you?
Yeah, that's a good point. Um,
um, Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you want to see a tight, what is it, 90 minutes? So I mean,
It's pretty
if you
short,
want to
yeah.
see a tight, really brilliantly acted and uh, like quickly, briskly paced movie that you haven't seen before, and you just want something to like kind of come and go, and you're like, oh, that was at the very least, you'll be like, that was pleasing. That was pleasing.
That was pleasing.
That would be my pitch. I mean, but at the same time, I know people that don't like it because oh, she's a high
Oh,
schooler or
yeah, we didn't
whatever.
talk a whole lot about that, but you and I had a conversation about how, for some reason, it seems like, teenage girls get so much hate, more hate than
Yeah,
teenage boys, and a weird amount. It's like they're not even human or something, and I think that's messed up.
right,
It does feel like a generational thing, little bit of, societal misogyny kind of stuff, but I feel like people are starting to get to a point where they can recognize that a little bit better. I know I'm guilty of it as well. I mean, there was a time when I was like, oh, a teen girl is so annoying, even though I was one. So I love how compassionate this movie is to teen women and to teenagers in general. I think sometimes young people get a bad rap. Um, and they're just trying to figure it out like we all were at that age, so I like how compassionate this movie is about that.
right.
um
I feel like that was a priority for Greta when she wrote it, was kind of just to not write them as blanket annoying
I mean,
teenagers.
right.
You know, that everybody's just trying to figure themselves
I
out.
know, and the teenagers have genuinely good, kind moments. They're growing into the people that they're going to become, and they're not awful people. But yeah, I think that this is a really good coming of age story. I think it's devoid of most cliches in coming of age stories. It has a
Yeah, the
couple.
only thing is the best friends coming together at the
Yeah,
end, but
yeah,
like other than that, there's no central love story. She's kind of jumping around. Well, she's only two love interests, but they're not ideal love interests,
yeah.
like
Neither
at
one. Yeah, she
all.
doesn't have to choose
They're high
one.
school
You
ones.
know, she doesn't have to pick between the two of them or something. It's more about her journey, and yeah, I think it's
Hmm.
just a really fresh take on this genre, and really made me an Insta fan. And I think if you've heard some things about it that were negative, I think you should dismiss those and give it a shot, because almost everyone I've talked to that's seen it really ended up liking it. So yeah.
I agree. I agree. I mean, at least most people. Like, I can only think of a couple that I know that were like, their main complaint though was that Ladybird was annoying or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm just,
I think if you were like a parent
I
of
hate that complaint so much.
teenagers, that maybe this would be too close to home. So that could have
Yeah,
something to do with
that's
it,
true.
even in the person that I'm thinking about that was mad. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
They do
yeah.
have
Same here.
teenagers, so maybe
See,
control.
I have a friend who doesn't have necessarily a teenager yet, but they have a kid, and they were like, my kid would never do that.
Yeah, it's
And I'm
like
just kind of like, you can't compare a movie to your real
to
life
your
100%
kid.
of the time.
Yeah,
It's not fair.
yeah, I agree.
You even said that. I think you said that like earlier. Like, it's not. It's like fiction,
Yeah,
guys. It's like not. It's supposed to be a direct parallel to you.
yeah.
No, we said that about
Oh,
Tanya,
yeah, yeah.
because Tanya wasn't supposed to be a thing. Just because it's a movie's about a bad person doesn't mean it's saying we should celebrate them.
Yeah, in the same way, I think Ladybird, I mean, I like the character and she has
Hmm.
an arc, but she's not like, I don't watch that movie and think, oh, she's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, or
Right.
whatever. It's like she's not the hero of the film. There's no hero.
Hmm.
It's just about her. Yeah,
Right.
agree, agree.
So that would be part of my elevator pitch too, is that it's not a predictable coming of age
Yeah,
story. There's still a lot of things you haven't seen in a movie before.
agreed.
And I'm glad she got nominated for Best Director
Yeah.
for this one, even though it was that award was clearly going to go to I think Del Toro won it.
Yes, yeah.
If not him, then I would have expected to go to. Well, I would have wanted it to go to Jordan Peele out of all five of those,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because that's who else was
But it's
nominated that year.
hard
It was a
because that
good. It
was
was
a
a good. It
horror
was a good year
movie,
for
and
film.
so horror movies never win anything.
No,
Uh,
at least it got. I mean, I'm really happy that Get Out got a lot, as much of it as it did.
yeah, yeah.
That was the year that Blade Runner 2049 came out. So never mind. Blade Runner 2049 should have won everything
Yeah,
for all
forever.
time,
And to
forever,
today.
for all
Yeah,
Oscars going
agreed.
forward.
I just realized that your name, no one can see this because we're recording on something, but your name is Jeffy Bird, which I really appreciate. I didn't
Yeah,
notice that before. That's hilarious.
yeah, we can pick our own names.
um,
I run with it.
yes, thank you. That's entertaining. But thank you, Jeffy Bird, for coming on today. What if that sticks? That would be really crazy. But thank you for coming on again. And it's been a while, but I'm glad that you're back and hope to have you
Oh, I'm going
on.
to be honest. Thank you for having me. I'm going to be honest with you. The nickname thing is also another thing I can relate to. I insisted on being called. I went through a Three Ninjas
Oh
phase. I
no.
love that movie. So I used to be like, somebody call me Rocky or somebody call me Colt.
No way. I remember a
Um,
guy that I was attracted to that wanted to be called Ace, and that didn't work out. It's so dumb. But yeah, I was like, I'll call you that, and no one else would. So it didn't work out.
so definitely I relate to it on that level too, like of
That's
the Ladybird thing, and
hilarious.
everybody's like, I'm not going to call you that, and then I gave up quicker than she did. She
Yeah,
insisted on writing it out.
she really stuck to her guns with that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I did write it out on some like school assignments,
That's
but I
hilarious.
gave up quickly, very
It's me,
quickly.
Rocky. That's
It's
awesome.
Rocky. Call me Rocky.
Rocky Jeff. Yeah, that's hilarious.
It's so terrible. Rocky
Rocky
Bird. There
Bird,
we
there
go.
you
That's
go.
me.
Well, thank you again for coming on. This was so fun. I had so much fun reminiscing and talking about this movie. Hope to have you back soon.
It's so good. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody that listened for not stealing this. This movie, I was a little surprised only because it's more recent
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
highly praised, and so it's probably in the front of people's minds when they think of great movies from the last like 5 years.
Yeah.
So I was a little surprised, but at the same time, they're probably thinking more like classics, like like older movies a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah,
maybe.
they do tend to be older films that people pick. That's true.
And I don't know, I'm just totally blanking on movies that are older that I would even pick.
It's okay.
It's like I only exist 2010 onward from a movie perspective, even though it's not true. Um, but yeah, I love being on the show. I love the show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being on.